Hey friends, it's Len here from 1A Auto. Today in the studio we have a third generation Ford Explorer. I wanted to go over some of the top problems that we've come to find, so let's get started. Now for our first problem, we're going to talk about ignition coil issues. Your ignition coil on this truck is going to be located right along the front, right here. Now the job of the ignition coil pack is to take power that comes from this lead right here, go ahead and build it up inside this area, and then it's going to transport it through these wires to the spark plug. At that point, the spark plug is going to spark up and ignite the combustible materials inside of your engine, which of course is going to make the engine turn over and run. Now if you are having an issue with your ignition coils, what you might happen to find is lack of power. You might also happen to notice that you have a misfire condition. If you have a misfire condition, you might tend to feel that under acceleration or even idling sitting still. Other than that, you might happen to notice that you have a check engine light that comes on the dash. Now, if you were to pull that check engine code, you might happen to find that you have codes that come up saying something along the lines of P0301 or even P0306. Essentially, anywhere in between is going to tell you which cylinder is having an issue. Other than that, you might just happen to notice lack of power, but that's more than likely going to be due to the misfire condition. Now, ignition coils come in all different shapes and sizes. This one in particular comes as a coil pack, which essentially means it has one coil pack that controls all the spark plugs through their wires. Some common causes why maybe your coil pack might go bad essentially could be because, of course, there's a lot of heat coming from your engine. The heat, of course, is going to break down the plastics that come along here. If it breaks down and cracks in any way, moisture can make its way inside. Other than that, of course, where the wires go on, if you were to remove that and look down inside here, you're going to see an area where, of course, moisture could potentially make its way in. There's going to be a contact point that needs to make its way to here. That's how the current's going to go through. If moisture makes its way in there, or even the electrical connector on the back side here, of course you're going to have a runnability issue. Now as far as fixes for this, it's going to be a little bit different than diagnosing regular coils, something such as this, because of course if you had one of these and it was directly over a spark plug, all you would have to do is essentially go ahead and transfer it from one spark plug to another, and of course if that misfire happened to move to the new cylinder that you move the coil to, you'd be able to tell that your coil's bad. For this in particular type of coil, it's a little bit different though. Essentially with this one, you have one coil that's controlling all the different spark plugs. If you happen to find that you're having a misfire on one in particular cylinder, you could of course go ahead and try to remove the wire, inspect it, inspect inside this area, and then of course you'd want to go down to the spark plug, inspect the spark plug as well. And of course if you found that you were having an issue with multiple cylinders, then more than likely that's going to come down to having an issue with the coil pack. So if you find that you're having an issue with the coil, of course you'd want to go ahead and replace that. Typically at the same time as replacing the coil, it really couldn't hurt to replace the wires if they haven't been done in a while, and of course inspect those spark plugs, and typically you're going to replace those as well. Now for our second problem, we're going to talk about timing chain issues. More specifically on this, the timing chain tensioner and guides. Now for this problem, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to show you something because it's actually located inside the front of the engine. The responsibility of the timing chain, of course, is to keep everything in time. You're going to have valves that are inside your engine that need to be able to open and close as they should. If for some reason something's out of time, the valves aren't going to be able to function properly and your engine's not going to run right. Now if your truck's having this issue, some of the things that you might happen to find is that you hear a little bit of a ticking noise coming from your engine. That's how it's generally going to start. You might also happen to hear a whining noise coming from the front of your engine. Any of these things could potentially mean that you're having an issue with your timing chain and or the timing chain tensioner, and of course guides. You might also happen to notice that you have runnability issues. Maybe it just doesn't seem like your engine has as much power as it should. Of course, if this issue got worse and you didn't necessarily take care of it in time, you might actually have internal engine damage. Now as far as fixes for this, it's not necessarily going to be the easiest thing to go ahead and fix. You're going to have to pull apart the entire front end of your engine here so you can access the timing chain and of course the timing chain tensioner. Something like this is something that you're going to want to replace all at the same time. So when you're in there, go ahead and replace the timing chain, the tensioner, and any guides that you happen to find that look as though they're worn. And of course keep in mind, if you happen to mess up the timing of the engine when you're doing the replacement of this, your engine's probably not going to run right. Now for problem number 3, we're going to talk about blend door issues. For this, we're going to be inside the passenger compartment. You're going to be able to find your temperature control switches. This one right here in the center, obviously is the one that you can make it so you can go hot or even cool depending on your particular situation. There's going to be a blend door that's located behind your dash that's going to be able to take care of that. Other than that, you also have this one right here. This is the diverter one. So of course if you wanted the air coming out of your vents, you can do that. Or go ahead and switch it to defrost to go ahead and defrost that windshield. Well, in some cases, what could potentially happen is the blend doors that are supposed to be able to switch these things around inside of your dash end up binding up inside. It's very common for them to either crack or break in some way, and of course bind. Other than that, a reason why they might bind could potentially be something fell inside of one of the vents. Maybe somebody put a pencil or a piece of debris made its way inside. If it's binding up the blend door, you might have an issue where you can't go from cold to hot or hot to cold. or even you try to go from defrost to something else. Another symptom that you might happen to find could potentially be if you were to try to switch this from either hot to cold or cold to hot, you might end up hearing like a clunking noise coming from behind your dash. Now, if you were to go ahead and pull down on your glove box, you're going to be able to see behind here where your heater box is. There's going to be blend doors that are located inside that. If, of course, you had an issue with one of the blend doors, you're going to have to get inside of this area and try to diagnose it. Typically what it's going to come down to is you're going to have to go ahead and replace the entire HVAC box if you're having an issue with one of your blend doors. Now for our fourth problem, we're going to talk about fuel pumps. The fuel pump on this truck is going to be located on the passenger side inside your fuel tank, which is located under the truck. Now I have a fuel pump in my hand right here. It's not necessarily the one for this truck, but it's one that you can physically see because the other one's inside the fuel tank, and I'm of course not going to drop it out of there just to show you it. What can potentially go bad on the fuel pumps themselves is of course you're going to have this selector right here, which is essentially going to tell your fuel gauge where the fuel level's at. This could potentially go bad. Other than that, inside you're going to have a fuel pump itself. The fuel pump, of course, is going to have the job of sending the fuel up to the engine so it can be burnt up inside that combustion chamber. The pump itself, of course, could potentially wear out. It's just an electronic pump, and of course, the more it runs, especially if your fuel level is typically low, maybe you like to be under quarter tank for some reason most of the time, you're gonna burn out your fuel pump. Some common symptoms that you might happen to have if you're having an issue with your fuel pump might be a loud humming noise coming from underneath your truck around the fuel tank. Some of the symptoms that you might happen to have if you're having an issue with your fuel pump might be you get out of your truck and you happen to hear a loud humming noise coming from underneath the truck around the fuel tank. A light humming noise is very common because of course the pump is going to make a little bit of noise, especially inside that fuel tank. If you hear a loud humming, more than likely the fuel pump's on its way out. Another symptom that you might happen to have if you're having an issue with your fuel pump might potentially be a runnability issue. The reason for that is because if the fuel pump isn't up to par, it probably doesn't have enough fuel pressure going up to the engine to be burnt up in that combustion chamber. If that's the case, you're probably going to find that you have a runnability issue, you might find lack of power, or even the truck just doesn't even want to start. Now, as far as fixes for this, what we're going to want to do is, of course, check fuel pressure first. You want to make sure that you're up to spec. If for some reason your fuel pressure is a little bit low, of course, you're going to want to check that fuel filter. If the fuel filter looks as though it's rusted and old in any way, or maybe you just haven't replaced it since you've even owned the truck, go ahead and replace that because more than likely it's probably pretty plugged up. After you replace the fuel filter, go ahead and retest that. Make sure that your fuel pressure is up. If for some reason it still isn't up, more than likely it comes down to the fuel pump. If for some reason you're replacing the fuel pump, it really only makes sense to replace the fuel filter at the same time. Okay friends, let's make our way to the back of the truck because I want to talk about our fifth problem. For this one, it's going to come down to this wiper arm right here. There's going to be a couple different things that I want to go over with it. What you might happen to notice is when you go ahead and put on your wiper blade, for some reason the wiper blade itself just doesn't necessarily touch up against the entire back window here. Maybe it touches a little bit and then it just doesn't even clean the rest of it. A common reason for that could potentially be the wiper blade itself, but generally it comes down to this joint right along here. It's supposed to be a hinge and it's supposed to flow freely. So essentially if I was to lift this arm away and let it go, well, it's supposed to go back up against the window. It's supposed to hold pressure against the window so it can clean it properly so you can see out the back window. The hinge right along here is very susceptible to moisture, and of course it's going to build up corrosion. If the hinge builds up corrosion or is stuck in any way, of course it's not going to be able to put the proper amount of pressure up against the window to be able to clean it. To fix this, of course, what you could try to do is carefully try to spray it with some penetrant. Of course, you don't want to get it all over the window or any of your paint, and then try to work it in just by going back and forth like this. Typically, that's going to make its way inside there and it's going to loosen it up so you have pressure up against the window again. Other than that, if you found that after you tried doing it, it just really didn't want to work very well still, you just go ahead and replace this wiper arm. It's very simple. Take this off right here and of course remove the wiper blade. And since we're talking about the rear wiper arm, let's go with the possibility that maybe you go ahead and switch it on, but for some reason it just doesn't even function at all. If that's the case, it's going to come down to the wiper motor itself. So if you were to lift up on your tailgate and get underneath this plastic right along here, you're going to be able to find where your wiper motor is. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this away so we can take a peek. Now with this pulled away, we have a clear view of the wiper motor itself. You can see where the shaft is supposed to go through the window and then to the wiper arm. One of the first things I like to check is this electrical connector that goes into it. Go ahead and take it off, take a peek. If you see any funny colors, it's corrosion and it needs to be dealt with. After that, what I want to do is test for power and ground. We want to make sure that we have power going to it when it's supposed to. If it has power and ground coming right along here, but this still doesn't work, you need to go ahead and replace your wiper motor. Whoa. Since we're back here, this is another thing that I want to talk about. A crack that looks a lot like this is very common on these Fords. Typically what it comes down to when this tends to happen is you're gonna have to replace this panel right along here. Okay friends, so that's pretty much what I've got for you for top problems on a 3rd generation Ford Explorer. Maybe you got one of these trucks or a car of your own with a story of your own. If you do, leave it in the comments section below, because I always love to hear from you. If you liked the video or you learned a little something, go ahead and smash on the like button for me. It means the world. While you're at it, subscribe, ring the bell, and of course share it with all your friends. That way everybody can be kept up with all of our latest content. Thanks.